So, as someone who grew up deeply moved by Close Encounters of the Third Kind, I've always felt there's something almost intangible about it. This sense of wonder, curiosity, and even spirituality it leaves you with. From your perspective as the producer, when did you first realize the film had that kind of impact beyond just being a great story?
I think when Stephen put it together, our intention was that it be about what intergalactic brotherhood was, what Ray Bradbury said, and I love that description. Um, I had the film that most influenced me as a child was The Day the Earth Stood Still. And it was the first time I saw aliens as smart, good guys and not coming here to eat us. And that's what I think Close Encounters sends a wonderful message about we're not alone. There are other intelligences, probably, in fact, undoubtedly, out there in the universe. And it would be so exciting if we could ever make contact with them. That's a whole other issue. It's not going to happen in my lifetime, but anyway. So I don't know if that answers your question. It was when it came together. The last 40 minutes of that film I can watch a million times. It always evokes that same sense of wonder in me. It's a cornucopia, is what I told Stephen. I thought it was. He could have ended the movie much earlier, but he kept giving and giving and giving. And so you leave the theater with a sense of, wow, I got my money's worth.
Yeah, I agree. I've seen the film so many times. I even bought recently the 4K edition that has it not only has the theatrical cut, but then it has an extended cut, and then it has the director's cut, and I've watched all 3 of them.
I can't even remember what's in the final version. So many things have been in and out. But
Yeah, well, the funny thing was there was the theatrical version, then in the extended version, of course, it goes a bit longer and it goes, in some different I mean, the storylines get expanded upon a lot more, but what was really interesting is the shortest version of the film is Steven Spielberg's director's cut. Now, one of the things that stands out is how grounded and human the film feels despite its scale, the size of the film. How intentional was that balance from a producing standpoint?
well, I have to say that this is Steven Spielberg a thousand times over. And as a producer, Uh, I can take credit for embracing the dream and helping it move forward and comforting Stephen and giving him ideas along the way. But his instinct to make it grounded in a very identifiable person, and Richard Dreyfuss nailed that, was his instinct as a filmmaker, that the wonder would be much greater if we had a civilian rather than a professional at the core. The movie started out, Stephen, we became involved, we meaning my partner and ex-wife, Julia Phillips, met Stephen when he was just working on and not finished with, what's the film? His first film, which just slipped my mind. But he was Sugarland Express, working on Sugarland Express. And we were at Universal working on The Sting. And we had become friends, and he'd come out to the beach. And one day he said, I want to come out and talk to you about an idea I have for a movie about UFOs and Watergate. This is before his first film was even finished. But we were very excited about the idea of working with him. And so the movie ended up being nothing like what that pitch was, which was supposed to be about a guy who was an insider working on debunking UFOs, and he became converted. He turned around instead of the Richard Dreyfuss character, who's a lineman. Yeah.
Speaking about your seeing his previous work and it leading to this, from your perspective as a producer, what qualities did you see in him that made you confident in his ability to handle a challenging project like Close Encounters?
Well, Duel was riveting. I'm sure you've seen it,
Yes.
and he put the he gave us visuals we hadn't seen. He'd put the camera inside the wheel of a truck. He just had a tremendous fluency in film, and he hadn't done Jaws yet, but we knew, we believed in him. And the qualities to me as a producer, I like to see something that is unexpected, surprises me. In fact, I'd stray from the direct comparison here, but the film that currently on my mind the most is Surat, which is the Spanish entry for the Oscars. It didn't win. From the opening moments, the way he chose his shots and told his stories had me on the edge of my seat. There wasn't any conventional tricks. It was all new stuff. And this is how I felt about Duel and other directors who I've seen who keep me off balance when they're I see their early work and I want to be in business with them. Yeah, that I look for somebody who surprises me, keeps my interest, and doesn't surprise. I guess I like as a moviegoer to be surprised. I don't like to get ahead of the story.
Getting more into your job, like your duties as the producer, in your opinion, what does a great producer actually protect? Is it the budget, the director's vision, the audience experience, or some
I can
combination
only
thereof?
speak to the way films were made. Today, you have a million producers on a film, and I don't know what each of them does, but I was lucky to work in the '70s when the producer was the entrepreneur who gave life to the idea, who came up with the idea, fought for it, and found a way to bring it into reality. Your job as a producer is a function of who the director is, and I think you do whatever you can to help him make the best film he's capable of making. Sometimes being very involved, giving your opinion on a lot of things, including shots. Sometimes it's an emotional support. Sometimes it's sit back and much less to do. It really depends each time around. You're an accordion. You have to stretch to help help the director make the best film he's capable of. And so your question about where my loyalty is, it's to the director. In the end, everybody's happy if the film is terrific.
Did you have to provide any protections on Close Encounters?
Well, usually that was my role. On this case, it was my partner, Julia, who was on the line, and she did an amazing job. You have to run interference between your director and the studio, who's always breathing down your neck to, you got to go faster, you got to drop this sequence, you got to, all kinds of, yeah. It's a dance, and everybody has a role to play, and they have to yell at you, and you have to convince them that you're on the job, but you also have to lie and to, keep them at bay and then fight the same battle again the next day or the day after. But it's a easy situation.
So when a project does face doubt or studio pressure, how should the filmmakers respond?
I made films in a different era when the studios, they were looking to try to create exciting new movies that would attract an audience. Today, they want to manage intellectual properties so that they can be exploited indefinitely in the future. And the respect for the filmmakers themselves has gone way downhill. It's the property. If you own an important comic book, you're going to make multiple versions of it, and the creative talent is interchangeable. So I don't know how you deal with the studios today. I have not been in that position. So as I said, I can talk, but all my other experiences is just there's a constant tension about trying to convince the studios that to back off, take a look at the film. The important thing is the film good? Are we close to budget? But you're always over a little bit. You can't help it. Because the budget is a lie. That's how you get your green light. And everybody knows it. It's the dance. It's a little bit of a game. You sign off on something and you're gonna go over. In Close
Um,
Encounters, we went a lot. In Close Encounters, we first set it up as a pitch with Columbia Pictures, and there was nothing but this idea, I wanna make a movie about UFOs and Watergate, to the then head of the Columbia Pictures, David Beagleman. And Beagleman asked him in the room, "So what's this gonna cost?" And there was no script. There was nothing. And Spielberg blurts out $2.7 million. And, we go out of the room and, "Where'd you come up with that?" And he said, "Well, that's the number I figured the biggest number I figured I could say, and it wouldn't frighten him." So that's it was a fun experience. But so he came up with it out of thin air. We didn't even have a script, much less a budget. We had nothing. We had a one-liner, but, it's crazy. Today, it's a different business and everything is meticulous, and I don't know if you can get away with that, but, uh, but we got lucky. Eagleman caught it, and then when he went off, we tried developing the script for a while, draft by Paul Schrader, a draft by John Hill. It wasn't working. Steve went off to do Jaws, and by the time he came back, he had the keys to the kingdom because now, you know, Columbia, which was on the verge of bankruptcy, was betting the farm on this film. And so even though they screamed and hollered, they knew that they had to make it, had to supply what was needed within reason, if it was going to be a home run and save the studio. So
What would you say, looking at the role of a producer at that time, what would you say were uh, were the most misunderstood aspects of producing?
I yeah, talking about the 70s. That's a tough question to answer because the producer had a very, very, very important role in early Hollywood. And in fact, his credit usually came before the writer, and there was usually one, occasionally two producers on a film. So the producer was looked to as the person who would deliver the film, and if it was bad, they would be held responsible. It started changing in the 70s when producers were looked at to bring new talent and new ideas. I mean, I want to back away a little bit and just tell you in a nutshell how what I saw happening in the 70s. I saw by the 70s, I mean from the mid 60s to the late 70s. Studios were in the habit of always mimicking last year's big success, and The Sound of Music had made so much money that they were making all these musicals that bombed. And along came Easy Rider and showed that if you give some $500,000 to a bunch of pot smoking, ponytailed hippies, you might get lucky. And so the doors opened, and the studios began to let producers and new directors have a shot as long as the cost controls were within reason. And so Easy Rider opened the door, and then Heaven's Gate closed it because Michael Cimino went so crazy over budget and abusive of the studio and made a film that bombed at the box office that the studios came back and reasserted their control. So that was, again, a lucky break to work in the 70s. You really had more freedom to protect your director and thereby protect the film. So I was lucky.
Do you know, I'm about to ask a question, and I guess, it may technically be a two-parter because we're talking about the differences between the '70s and now, essentially, right?
Mhm. Right.
And you can tell me if you think there's a difference. But what are the habits that you think separate talented filmmakers from filmmakers that actually get to work? You know, some working filmmakers. What are the habits that you think separate those two?
Wow. Luck, very big deal. I really think the only open door to Hollywood filmmaking is writing. Everything else is you gotta have luck, and I've seen that one of the great things about filmmaking in Hollywood is there's tremendous mobility. People don't move up a ladder. They move in leaps and bounds, and they change hats or in positions. And I've seen unit publicist on a film become a head of a studio or a director in 2 years. So, and when people move, they like to work with people they already know. So you sort of come along for the ride. Their posse gets to work too. And this happens again and again. People are comfortable with people they know and have worked with. So I think it's young filmmakers. It's really important to rub elbows with all the other people in the business you can and be nice to everyone because the guy bringing coffee this week is running a studio 5 years from now. And original screenplays. That's where I think you can show your talent. I don't believe in student films as doing very much. You get praise, but being able to tell a story for 20 minutes is not the same as telling a story for 2 hours. And I've seen a lot of hearts broken by really talented filmmakers who can't get a lift from their short.
Mhm.
So I think again, answer your question, rub elbows with the other people, be flexible, be alert. And, any job is good, even though it doesn't look like it at first. If you're working in the business, there's this incredible phenomenon of suddenly you're doing something else a year later with the same people. So, and also there's different ways producers approach I believe, and for me, the only way I can really stay motivated and do my best is I have to love the project, or else, my enthusiasm flags and my efforts are no good. But there are a lot of producers who know how to calculate what the marketplace is looking for, the marketplace being the financiers, and they can focus their efforts on putting together projects that are likely to sell, in their opinion. So that's it's impossible to get a movie made, and every time it's a miracle, and every time it's a different set of events that makes it happen. But my way was I just have to follow my gut. If I love something and I believe that cross my fingers, maybe there'll be other people out there who feel the same way. And it's my particular set of tastes, which, as I mentioned, I like being surprised. I like seeing something that's fresh and different to my experience. So, are we talking to producers or in your audience, Justin? Are we talking to who are the people who are?
Yeah, so the audience is gonna be made up of filmmakers in general, so you can be looking at cinematographers, directors,
Yeah,
producers. We run the gamut of people that would be seeking out this advice, and I think it's been
right.
very, very
Okay,
useful.
good. Again, then it does apply to all because any of those, you get your foot in the door and you're a cinematographer, and then you're a director or an editor.
Yeah.
But people move.
Yeah, and you've spoken to the commercial viability of projects, just a second ago. How do you balance commercial viability and artistic risk, or at least, the way that it was done, through the '70s and the '80s?
Well, I pray that something I find exciting and really different will meet the same reception by an audience. I lose it if I try to calculate, and target. This should I can't do it that way. I was brought up in the producing world with the freedom to follow my heart and do the projects I love. They didn't all work out, but yeah. So I don't know how you analyze the commercial prospects. I just try to repeat a formula or get a movie star.
Looking back over your career, what mistake you've made do you think taught you the most?
Oh, wow, many mistakes along the way. Arrogance. I had the good fortune and the bad fortune of having a lot of success early in my career, so I didn't really appreciate how hard it is to make a film that's a hit. And I did not put in the work to create financing home to be able to plan for the future, to know that, okay, here's where I'm going to build my projects, and this is their home. I bounced from studio to studio with a script in hand, and whoever bought on, they were my best friend. So, um, yeah, I didn't really look ahead far enough. Of course, I've made mistakes as a producer on specific films. One of which was really powerful lesson. Made what I thought was should have been a wonderful film and largely is. It was called The Tender when we shot it, but it was released as Eyes of an Angel, starring John Travolta, directed by Robert Harmon. And the writer, Bob Stitzel, wrote a fantastic movie about that's really seen through the eyes of a dog. And we didn't have the ending right. And we went into production without an ending, just sort of kicking the can down the road, saying, "Oh, we'll figure it out." And meanwhile, each of us was secretly thinking, "Well, Bob Stitzel, the writer, will think it up," or each thinking that somehow by magic. And we went through a lot of iterations of an ending in the screenplay, and we ended up shooting the one that we thought was best. It wasn't. It may have been the best of the lot, but it wasn't a great ending. And so, when you have a movie that doesn't end well, you're doomed. So
Mhm.
that was a lesson. Don't start without. And another thing I learned, but I made a movie called Heartbeeps, which was about two robots who fall in love. And I hadn't realized, and it was a new director, and starring Andy Kaufman and Bernadette Peters. Alan Arkush directed, and John Hill wrote the script. But I had seen Star Wars, and those robots were terrific. And what I hadn't realized was that you can't linger on them too long or it kills the pace because the range of expression in a robot's face is limited.
Mhm.
Um, and somehow we just didn't fully appreciate that this was gonna kill the pace of the movie, and so that is very unfortunate. Those are 2 examples of, regrets that wish I had foreseen and could have foreseen if I knew what I know now. So it's sad. When you make a movie and it crashes, it's very painful. Years of dreams and hundreds of people, it dies. It's,
I read a quote once that said, "Films are never finished, they're just abandoned."
or taken away. Yeah,
Or taken
yeah,
away from you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's true. And Mr. Spielberg is a prime example of that. He's never finished. Close Encounters, they've got about 7 different versions.
I'm And
Yeah.
it's so funny because you watch each version and you can walk away feeling completely different with each one.
Well, I didn't like the one where we saw the interior of the ship. That was,
That's the extended, I think.
yeah, I don't know what you call them anymore, but that was in response to people loved the movie originally, and, so many people said, "I really, love to know what it looks like inside." Anyway, it's not it was not the right move, and he admits it, but I'm so happy and so proud to be associated with that film.
Well, it's definitely one you definitely should be proud of. Well, this has been such a great conversation. I just want to be respectful of your time. So to wrap it up, if you were starting today with no contacts, no credits,
Mhm.
and no leverage, what would you focus on first?
First, win the lottery. Have a nice day job. I think it's almost impossible to support yourself as an independent producer today because uh, you don't get paid. My earlier days, you got paid for developing screenplays. This doesn't happen anymore. And also now you got to split your fee with many other people. So there's very little money in it for a producer. Talking about independent producer. Uh, and you start writers are the key. You know, you gotta find writers who you really believe in and show them your belief and try to help them. And this has been lucky in that respect that I've found new writers who never sold anything before, David Ward and Paul Schrader, and got lucky. Got lucky. And in my view, you better love the project because there's so much heartbreak along the way that if you're doing it out of calculation, it's going to be, you can't go back to loving it. It's hard to go out the next day and fight the battles.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's not a good profession. Don't know where it's going now with the AI and it's all and the tendency to use pre-existing intellectual properties, so the original filmmaking is a tough road, but it's great in the streaming. If we're talking about movies, but in the television, it's a golden age.
Mhm.
Great things being done. So yeah, well, maybe that's another conversation, but that's my parting word is that television is the promised land right now, not features.
Well, thank you so much for your time, my audience, as well as myself. We truly appreciate it. This was Michael Phillips, everybody.
Well, goodbye, everybody, and good luck to you. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you.